Hello and welcome to HMS TechTalks. Today we're going to talk about the EU Machine Directive and what impact that will have to builders of machines, both in Europe of course, but also around the world. And to talk about that today we have Daniel Heinzler from our Ixxat team in Ravensburg. Welcome, Daniel.
Thanks for having me.
So the EU Machine Directive has been in effect for quite some time, but it's now changing a little bit. Firstly, give us a background. What is the EU Machine Directive?
Yeah, well, let's just go back in time a little bit. When the EU was founded, the basic idea behind it was to have free movement of people and goods inside those different countries. And to make that happen, you have to have some basic rules. So to make sure that, basically if you have a machine or a device that you build in Spain, you have to make sure that if you plug it in Sweden into your outlet, it doesn't explode and it is safe also there. So
always good.
That's good. And before the European Union, it was like, every different countries had their own set of rules. So the EU stepped in and started issuing directives for different parts of daily life. And one of those directives is the Machinery Directive. So the Machinery Directive lays the ground rules for machine safety inside all of the EU. So as I said, it is issued by the European Union itself and is implemented into law in every single EU member state. So if you build a machine, import a machine, or transfer a machine from one country to another, you have to abide by those basic rules set by this Machinery Directive, right, which basically just say what you have to do to have the minimum amount of safety in your machine.
And it has been in effect for decades, basically. Yeah. But there's now a change coming that is affecting a lot of machine builders. Tell us a bit about what's new.
Yeah, exactly. So the current Machinery Directive, that's mid 2023, that's active. It's from 2006, so that's quite a while ago. If you think about the first iPhone was released in 2007, so
back in the dinosaurs from the earth.
Basically, yes, from a technology standpoint, definitely. So back in 2006, there were things that no one could have predicted, like the upcoming of mobile machinery or cloud connectivity, AI, machine learning. All those topics were no one even thought about that back in 2006. So this is one, we are at a point in time where we have technology that overtook the legislation in Europe, and now we are trying with a new directive that gets into effect or gets released in the mid 2023, and after 42 months of transition period will be the new law, and just to make sure that we keep up with this technological enhancements in the last 17 years.
Right, so 42 months it will be the law in Europe. Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
yes.
So what's all about? What's the fuss about? What's new, really?
Yeah, right. There are, as I said, there are a lot of technological advances that happen in the last few years that are not part of the old Machinery Directive, like, as I said, security. So we have a lot more wireless technology everywhere. We have cloud connectivity. We have to make sure that no one logs onto any machine from the outside, and then have to make sure that this is protected. So we have a lot more requirements when it comes to security, which is not really part of the old Machinery Directive. And we have like those mobile machines that I said that are roaming around, that are intelligently moving around between people, that weren't part of the old directive. So we have to, they will be added to this new directive, and there's loads of more stuff.
Yeah, so both a wider directive, but also more machines to be included in.
Exactly, yes.
Right. But this is for Europe, of course, since it's the EU. But what are the differences between manufacturers in Europe and, say, in the US or China?
Yeah, so as I said, we have in Europe, we have the basis that we have the legislation that builds the ground rules. So you have to have this minimum amount of safety to at least release a machine in the EU. So you put on, after you release the machine, you put on the CE sign so that everybody can see this machine is safe, so you put it on as the manufacturer and everyone sees this. In the US, we don't have this, for example. In the US, we have, well, we base our machine safety on the same standards, like the ISO standards, which are global standards. But in the US, we don't have those ground rules set by a machinery directive or something. There are some rules like OSHA standards for organizational safety and health, but they are far away from the requirements from the machinery directive. So there are less requirements. So the entry barriers might seem lower, but then again, if something happens, if you get sued, like in the US, it's a different thing than to be sued in the EU.
Yeah. So it's easier to get them out of the market, but it's also a bigger risk, I guess. What about China? Because they're also a big manufacturer of machines.
Exactly. So in China, it's different again. So the basis is different. It's well, in China you have the CCC mark, which is kind of something like the CE mark, but the basis for it is different. So while the CE mark in Europe is in most parts self-certified. For most machines, you can sell, the manufacturer itself says, yes, my machine is safe. I put my signature underneath and then I put the CE sign on. For the CCC certificate from China, you have to involve a Chinese certified body to say, yes, your product is safe. And also your production process is safe. So the Chinese body comes into your production and checks if everything is according to Chinese standards. So the ground rules are different.
Right. Okay. So the different ground rules, but the I guess you could say that the demand for safety is steadily increasing, even though it's not legislated everywhere. So
definitely, and also for U.S. manufacturers and Chinese manufacturers, if they want to enter the European market, they still have to abide by this standard set by the Machinery Directive. So it's not only European manufacturers; it's manufacturers from all over the world when they want to sell to the EU.
Important as well, of course. Tell us a bit more about what will actually be changed in the new directive. What kind of machines will go into the new directive that hasn't been there before? Yeah.
So, for example, as I said earlier, we have this rise of the mobile robots. Let's put it that way, like AGVs and AMRs, like automated guided vehicles or autonomous mobile robots that are booming at the moment. Everyone wants to have a robot somewhere driving around on their factory floor. So those machines, they will be explicitly added into the new Machinery Directive. So one function that they have to have in the future would be a supervisory function. This means that you have to have the possibility to, from the outside, if something goes wrong, you have to have the possibility to safely stop and start this machine to prevent any harm from anyone. So that's something where you have to transfer basically a safe signal over a wireless network, for example, which you didn't have to do before. So that's one thing.
So a lot of more communication issues to think about as a machine manufacturer, especially when it comes to safety. And normally, machine manufacturers are not communication experts. So although you guys are at the BU Ixxat team, what is it that you help people with or machine builders with usually when it comes to safety?
Yeah, we have broad portfolio. We have, for example, we have safe software. If the manufacturer is able to do a complete safe implementation all by himself, just get the software stack for SIP safety or FSOE. So SIP safety based on Ethernet IP, is a safe layer over Ethernet IP, and FSOE being the safe layer over EtherCAT. We can just get them the software to implement on their own hardware. If they're able to do that, it's no problem. If they are not as savvy in the functional safety world, we have our T100 module, which basically is a safe I/O module that you can implement into your device, your machine, which helps you getting some safe inputs and outputs with those safe field bus connections. It's available also in SIP safety. We have it as a ProfiSafe version over Profinet, and also quite recently as an FSOE version.
For EtherCAT, So this helps machine builders get safety into their machines a lot faster because it's pre-certified with all its organizations.
Exactly, it's pre-certified by TÜV Rheinland, and it's up to SIL 3, SIL level 3, our performance level E, Cat 4. So it's quite most safety requirements by nearly all machines you can think of could be done by this little thing, and it's really highly because it's small. It's so easy to integrate. You don't need a lot of space. It's really good to just put it in, get it certified by TÜV.
Real time saver for
Exactly, yes.
Especially when you have all this new legislation for the EU Machinery Directive. Okay, Daniel, thanks very much for talking to us about this very new, interesting directive from the EU. And thanks very much for listening. And if you want to know more about our safe solutions, visit Ixxat.com or our corporate website at hmsnetworks.com. Thanks very much for listening.